Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the CVO Live. As we all know, the source of unhappiness is having unrealistic expectations, which means that's why we are unhappy, but we aren't because I'm here with David. Hi, David. Hello, and welcome to the
Hello.
show.
Hi. How you doing? You okay?
All
What
right.
do I
So,
say here? I
sorry.
mean, what do I say here? I could say hi. How are you
Yeah,
doing? I'm okay. What do you, I mean?
exactly. So, David, he's the one that builds made with intent. So he's into customer intent platform. He's a good friend of mine. He's in the CRO space. He's writing. He wrote already a fantastic book, and we will have a good conversation. Hopefully, if this worm, I don't know how warm it is there for you, man, but here is like completely. It's like we are. I feel like we are in Egypt, not in Romania.
Oh, I'm in the UK, dude. So it's always cold here. Always cold.
Always cold in Manchester. All
Always.
right, so David, let's kick things off by letting everyone know about what are your intentions. What were your intentions when you've got into the optimization space, and what kept you here?
What's my intent? I don't know. How far back do you want to go? When I was a little boy, I don't know. I started a company called User Conversion back in 2015, and we're a CRO agency. And I don't know, like, I don't know how you started your company, but the way I started was I was a freelancer and I just got some clients, and then I got too many clients. So I hired someone naively, not knowing if I could pay them. And then I got more clients, and then I hired more people naively, not knowing if I could pay them. And it just grew and grew and grew into something. I was always fascinated in, originally by this like fuse between the creative and the analytical. I never felt as though my brain settled in either of them. I don't know how if that's most CRO people feel, but to be really good at conversion optimization, I feel as though you need to be very creative, but at the same time quite analytical. You know, the qual and the quant. Do you ever find that? Do you think that's a thing? The left brain, the right brain merging?
For sure it is. David, I have a question regarding your naivety. So you've just I don't know, you've just painted the path of any entrepreneur, right? There is a moment when you decide to hire someone and you don't know if you will be able to pay that person, however you do it. Uh, do you think that this lack of, let's say, clarity uh, actually helped you down the line?
100%. Yeah, I always say, I don't know about you, but a lot of people have come to me for advice, probably naively themselves, thinking I could help. Asking like, what's it like to run your own business? How did you get started? And I always often give the same advice, just painted in a different way, which is all about risk. I find that as you get older, your dependency for risk decreases because you have more responsibilities, more dependence, you have mortgage, children, whatever it might be. But when you're younger, you don't have any of that. You have a little bit of freedom, and naivety can be your friend at times because you can go down the paths that others may not have trodden before, and your propensity to take risk is higher. So I started user conversion. I think I was 28, maybe 27. You know, I didn't have a house. I had a girlfriend at the time who's now my wife. No children. So I worked, I don't know, 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. You know, stupid hours because there was nothing else to do apart from watch Lost on TV. So I think naivety helps personally. So I think it's directly related to risk.
Yeah, I think the adversity to risk is lower because you don't have too much to lose. Basically, you don't have.
I guess so.
And I think if we are to look at I don't know, career optimization through the lenses of a CRO, you are authorized to do radical experiments with your life when you don't have enough years. So basically, when your traffic is low, you could do radical redesign because you don't have too much uh, traffic. And I think it's the same with your ears, right? Because you don't
Yeah.
have too many things to lose.
There's another approach as well. There's a guy called Duncan Wardle, who is the ex-head of innovation at Disney. You guessed it. That's Mulan, by the way. And he talks about like the 7 streams of creativity, as in what really fuels creativity. And one of those streams is what he calls the naive expert, which is bringing somebody into a room who is an expert in a completely different field to yours, and therefore is naive to your field. So as an example, he gave the example of when they were building a restaurant in Tokyo for the Tokyo Disneyland over there. And what they did is that they got all these Disney architects and Imagineers in one room, and they invited. Oh, have you gone? Is it just me?
No, I'm here.
Oh.
You're just on the spotlight.
Oh no, I'm just looking at myself. Okay, he invited a restaurateur into this conversation, which is someone who'd never done a theme park restaurant before, never been involved in theme parks, never been involved in Disney, etc. And whilst he asked all the people around the table to draw what a restaurant should look like, a Disney Tokyo restaurant, and everyone just drew a building like this with a door and windows and what have you, maybe a nice thatched roof. And this restaurateur designed a bao bun that was a restaurant, and that was their naive expert, like a restaurateur trying to design something for Disney that had nothing to do with their fild, i.e. an architect, what an architect would do.
Yeah.
I think naivety is the best form of reducing your risk and also, fueling creativity.
Yeah, it's also I recall a story from Feynman's biography. If you know Richard P. Feynman,
No.
an amazing book, by the way. I mean, one of the funniest books that I've ever read. Richard P. Feynman is one of the most famous physicists in the last century. And
Right.
he wrote a book about him going to the facilities where they were preparing to do that test on the nuclear bomb. And he was in a room with all these people. They were thinking about the way to evacuate some gases which will come out from this facility. And he was looking at some things, and he wasn't able to understand. It was like an icon, like a circle with an X. And he just pointed his finger there and asked, "What is this thing?" And those guys started to look at themselves, and they started to calculate, and they realized that they got a flow into their design. So they thought that this guy understood everything from a snapshot, but he was just curious to ask the question about what is this thing doing. So yeah, I think naivety is a great it's a great asset, to be honest.
It is. I completely agree. I mean, when you look at some of the best inventions in the world, they're all stolen creatively from other inventions. Like the story of the sat nav, that was stolen accidentally from Sputnik, if you know that story, how the sat nav was created. Or Dyson, the vacuum cleaner, how that was stolen. I think it was through like sawdust mills. It was taken directly from there, and that created the innovation of the Dyson vacuum cleaner. There's loads of others. Those two are the ones that come to mind, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
or the iPod.
Hey,
even the iPod and everything. I mean, there are few divergent products, creations. I mean, most of them are building on top of something, and they are actually replacing something. So basically, the iPod is the replacement of the radio, of the Walkman, which was the replacement of the radio, which so and so. So basically, everything that we are now using had some ancestors in the past, some innovations.
And then AI will replace it all. So there you go. Brilliant. That's all. We're done.
Well, yeah. If you want to get into that, you don't. All right.
I don't mind, actually. I don't know about you, but whenever I do any talks, specifically around my book, or when it comes to personalization, the one question that I get asked at the end of every single talk is exactly the same, which is, what does the future look like, or how will AI and personalization work together? And I find it both a fascinating topic and also equally hard to discuss. And we could talk about it by all means. I find it.
So
Yeah.
why don't we get a bit into your into your current passion, David? Because you've migrated from the CRO landscape to the personalization. I think it's 1 year now when we've got that conversation, when you were doing this research around the how different experts see personalization, and you've naively thought that I'm an expert as well.
Don't be silly. You've got a big old brain.
Yeah. So what's with the personalization? Why personalization, and where is this leading us?
Well, I found working in CRO for 15 years, who knows, and owning and running an agency was brilliant. I don't know if you found this, but we work with mostly retailers. A lot of their problems seem to be standardized. They seem to be almost like based on templates than anything else. The PDP is a problem. The PLP is a problem. And when people talk about CRO, it felt as though they're optimizing something that's quite generic. Obviously, a conversion rate, and we won't get into the definition here. I think that's too nebulous and it's been done to death. But something that's like aggregated and a rare event. And I felt that the term CRO has been bastardized for sure. And it felt in some senses quite inauthentic. And when I look at the antithesis of CRO, I look towards personalization. I look towards something that is personable, that isn't templatized. Is that a word? Templatized? It's not genericized on different templates, but it is either individual to the user or talks about connection and relationship with the brand and the individual, create some kind of intimacy between the two. So I feel as though CRO is a wonderful practice, and I don't want to get into the term about it, but for me, personalization felt more authentic. It felt more about what selling should be, which is ethical and understanding the individual. And I've often spoke, to others about my woes with Disney and how the brand, if I'm honest, have buggered me over, by price gouging and by just seeing me as a number rather than as a person. And I see that as their attempt to do conversion optimization. They are optimizing some business metrics that are all about price gouging me as an individual. And by doing so, have removed the personal nature and the intimacy between the brand and myself. So that is what led me down the path of being fascinated in personalization. And just for reference, also, everyone has a different definition of personalization. Every year has been the year of personalization. And don't you feel as though that conflict provides entertainment? I do. I've had so many agreements and disagreements with individuals because personalization is just this whole big ball of conflict. It's fascinating. Is it segmentation? Do you spell it with an S or a Z? It's an S, by the way. It's really interesting.
Because you're British.
Is that your British accent?
Well, English is not my native language, so I'm just winging it.
It sounded like you picked it up from the other way as Essex. Is that where you get your Britishness from? Yes, that's exactly the reason why. It is an S. Ask ChatGPT.
Yeah. All right. So, David, what I'm hearing is that personalization, it's a suitcase word. It has a lot of meanings for a lot of people. However, it points to somewhere, right? I mean, it gets companies, it makes companies make progress. It helps them make progress. And what I'm also hearing is the fact that an individual, a consumer, has a journey while the company has another journey. And in order for them to meet, to make progress together, what I'm hearing is that the company should make conscious efforts to personalize in the sense of adapting to what their consumer, their customer is trying to achieve, to the progress that they are trying to make with the help of their services or products. Am I hearing this correctly?
Yeah, it's not too far off. Who you designed for, yourselves or the customer?
All right. So what's in your book? What's the, I don't know. I have a friend, by the way, which is playing with the AI, and he plugged the Bible through GPT-4, and now you can speak with the Bible. You know, you can ask something like, "I don't want to go to work today," and the, and the Bible chat gets to him with some code like, man's purpose is to create value and whatever.
Or
So
is it giving you advice based on what the
yeah,
Bible would say?
exactly. And if we are to ask you, because you're the GPT-4 and the bridge towards your book, and if we are to ask, what's your book all about? What are the main insights? What's the purpose of that book? And what are some insights that we could get from your book? What would you ask?
Well, I feel I would summarize it as such that I feel as though we've lost the person in personalization. So that's what the book is called, Person in Personalization. I feel as though that person has been lost, and we've replaced it with greed, with money, with commercialism, with growth, with revenue, with this concept of more equals more, with let's put more in the top of the hopper and more will fall out, with revenue pressure. We've replaced it with the concept of ego and greed, with data, with AI, with technology. I feel like we're forgetting that there's a human on the other side of this screen who should be spoken to appropriately. Shouldn't be spoken to in a case of, would you like to buy this thing right now and you'll get 10% off? I'm just browsing, for goodness sake. No, but 50 people have already looked at this thing. I know, but I'm just browsing. Yeah, but if you sign up now, then you'll get a free newsletter that you won't be able to unsubscribe. You know, it feels so incredibly inappropriate and so far removed from a human to human interaction in store. And I feel as though that's been lost, and that it makes me kind of emotional, if I'm honest, perhaps a little bit far-fetched. I relate it to my time, you know, my relationship with Disney and my other love, which is Manchester United. I'm sorry, how they've removed, you know, the person element from what is essentially an experience in both examples, a fan experience and a guest experience. So if you were to ask ChatGPT for anything, or 5 as it will soon become, about my book, I would say, why have we lost the person in personalization? So I think people really resonate with that. I think they understand that we are slowly losing that personal element. It's being replaced with screens, you know, with giant Vision Pros or whatever it might be, with phones in front of our screens or faces. So I am advocating the need for us to have some level of intimacy between brand and person, which is what advertising is all about. It's what selling is all about, for goodness sake. So why have we lost that?
Yeah. Do you foresee a future which brands are hyper personalizing the experience of their customers, no matter the touch point, or where you are on this spectrum?
Yeah, I do see a possibility of it, but I don't feel it's likely. The possibility comes from the fact, you know, that one of the hardest things to do within personalization is just the concept of effort. You know, data is definitely a restriction. It's why Gartner state that 80% of all marketers will abandon personalization in the next 2 years. They cite data restriction, collection, management, accessibility as being the main proponent behind that stat. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I actually disagree. I think it's all to do with effort. I think as humans, marketeers would much rather take the blue pill and lose weight than go to the gym for 5 days a week. It's all about the concept of effort, and AI will reduce that effort. And therefore, I think it's a good thing. I also see a world where, with Web 3.0 and data governance being so important, who controls whose data? At the moment, websites in a 2.0 world, websites request data from you, the individual. And you just blindly accept yes to whatever the arbitrary cookie message is that comes up. And in a 3.0 world, you'll own your data profile and you'll pass over and willingly give certain pieces of information, not all of it, to that is relevant to the company that you want to give that to. And I feel as though putting the control back in the customer's shoes is a very, very good thing. For two reasons. Number one, ethically it's better. Number two, it will force companies to be more creative about how they approach personalization, because it will get harder, right?
Yeah.
It's
So
gone from the wild, wild west days of the cookie or tracking parameters. I think that's a good thing.
what I'm hearing, David, is that you foresee a future where the individuals are not disclosing too much data about them, forcing the companies to get very creative so that they stay relevant and persuade or convince the individuals to make the behavior changes that they are willing to, right?
Yeah, well, personalization is not going away. Let's just put a line in that sand. There's too much money in it. There's too much proof that brand relationships and intimacy that exists between brand and individual is always a good thing. There's far too many academic studies on that. And also, personalization is the root of all advertising. It has been empirically proven that targeted advertising works inherently better than mass advertising. I think we can all agree with that. There was a chap that I spoke to called Ian Daniels, who's the founder of the CX Collective, and he also agreed by basically saying personalization is not going away because there's too much money in it. The concept that Netflix are doing an advertising model, Amazon are doing an advertising model, they're the two biggest proponents of personalization because they hold so much data, psychographic, demographic, that it will just work for them. It'd be a great model. So I completely agree. So I do not think that personalization is going away anytime soon. I see it as evolving.
Mm-hmm.
I feel as though brands need to understand that it is about the individual and how to get and source preferences and interests from that individual will just become harder to do. The question becomes, how do you do that? And that's where that creativity comes from. I think there are solutions around that, by the way. I think if they're more intimate with the individual, if they provide some kind of value exchange, a reciprocity that is of value to the individual, that is more than just an arbitrary discount or a sign up for a newsletter, something slightly more creative, that a community, a brand, an identity, familiarity, acknowledgement, I think that will work inherently better going forward.
Yeah. David, I totally agree, and I will tell you the story of how I've dropped the ball when we've launched our a huge feature in our OmniConvert solution. So basically, it was 2015, and we've made this huge integration to get third-party data regarding the weather conditions, if it's raining, if it's snowing, if it's whatever.
Yeah.
And we thought, that's going to skyrocket us. All the marketers will do it automatically, and they will come up with these crazy ideas, and they will leverage this. Well, guess what? Those were we have like 45 data points that we are using to personalize or to adapt the web experience. Yeah. And those were the lowest, had the lowest adoption. Because most of the initially thought, those marketers are stupid, they don't know what to do, but we know, and we will help them to get the truth. While after that, we realized that these are not kind of usable. I mean, not all the products are being used according to the weather conditions. So there are few products. I mean, I don't know, ice cream, winter sports, stuff like that, and some tourism over here and there. I mean, it's if it's raining and you're in Manchester, which are high chances, by the way, and you are selling packages to Maldives or whatever, then you could kind of be a bit more persuasive if you have this data. But other than that, it wasn't working. What we also understood, I mean, after all these years, is that first-party data is a huge thing. So if you come up with a way to have enough people disclosing what they are struggling with or what they are after, what's the purpose of their visit or whatever, and if you crunch that data, if you understand the patterns of the reasoning behind the certain behavior, then you could influence that behavior way better than just doing this type of fingerprinting and third party data. So I think the cookies going away is not such a bad thing. However, there are a few marketers, and I want to touch this subject, by the way, with you. There are a few marketers that get what they are actually selling. You know, it was that famous Peter Drucker that half of the companies don't know what they actually sell.
Yeah.
So let's talk a bit about the human, the expert part of it. So where is the creativity needed in this process of being relevant and leveraging personalization for brands?
Well, sometimes it's forced. So I think regulation is forcing people away from the current status quo, which is great. I think technology forces people away from the current status quo as well. Like, I like your weather example, because your weather example tells me, forgive me, it's just stupid, isn't it? Let's be honest. It's not personalization at all. It's some arbitrary attribute that feels quite sexy, or feels quite creative, but really has little to no value. It has no personal data about it, so therefore I don't consider it personalization, because it is not personal in any way, shape, or form. It's about the bloody weather, for goodness sake. You know, how does that dictate a buying pattern for an individual? Or how can that be persuasive for an individual? It probably needs to be associated with a message, and then the context of that individual with that message as well. So I feel the creativity comes, being honest, from two areas. Number one is looking at other industries that do it well. By the way, there are many. We could talk about that. And number two, going back to basics. Like, we often get blindsided. We have blinkers on by sexy things, be that weather components or AI. And we lose track of what it means to actually sell human to human. Do you not think? When you're trying to sell your product to some of your prospects, you look at things like tone of voice, body language, not just what they say, but how they say. There's that famous, 7:35, what is it, 55:38 rule, where the meaning of what somebody says, only 7% is only conveyed through voice, 55% body language, and 3%, I think that makes sense, 38% is tone of voice. Well, those components convey meaning and context. And I think that's what we miss when we look at retailers or when we look at brands that try to look at the intent of the user, the meaning of why that person is there. I think that's why product quizzes are so good, by the way, because they explicitly try and get the context from the individual and serve up something to that individual. The problem we find ourselves is that product quizzes are only based around finding a product, not like selling a product. Let me give you an example. Have you ever seen a product quiz that says, how are you feeling today? Or how would it make you feel? How would this kettle change your life? I don't know. Something more emotional or ethereal rather than just, do you like black kettles or blue kettles? So I think context, meaning, intent, these things are all really important. They're missing from the selling process, which feels like 101 to me.
That's right. I want to ask you something related to the impact of personalization, and I know that you launched a new company nowadays, and you're after different things. How do you measure the impact? How can you influence the impact for the decision makers which are after profit? Because as you've said earlier, we've lost the person in personalization, and that was due to some KPIs and targets and goals which were to achieve by the decision makers, right?
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about this, because it kind of flows through from everything we spoke about beforehand. So we speak about creativity. We spoke about taking ideas from other companies or other industries. We speak about like the notion of quality and quantity, intent, meaning, context. So this all came from reading a few books. I'm a big football fan, like I've said. And in COVID, football went away. You can't play outdoors and what have you, and I really, really missed it. I started reading books about football statistics, and I don't know if you know much about football statistics or data. There's a
I know
concept.
that it's a thing at the end of any any football match, which shows things like possessions,
Okay, yeah.
shoots on target, and stuff like that.
So think about the concept of what a goal is. A goal is the goal within a football match. It's an aggregated metric that's retrospective. It's binary. Did someone score or not? And it's very rare. So 3 or less in a Premier League game. So how can you personalize your approach to the opponent if you're the coach when your end output is something that's rare, that's aggregated, that's retrospective, and predominantly based on luck? Well, there was a company called Opta Sports, and they came along and said, you know what, we can do better than this. We can use machine learning to predict whether a goal will occur or not based on a pattern of play, the angle of a shot, the distance of a shot. It doesn't matter whether Cristiano Ronaldo has taken the shot or, I don't know, Danny Ings, very good footballer, not to be disingenuous. It doesn't matter who's taken the shot. All that matters is the patterns of play that were quite systematic before a shot occurred. Now, doesn't this sound vaguely familiar to the way we shop in e-commerce, which is a bunch of systematic fashion attributes strung together that are both rational and irrational, that are systematic, that are based on a series of tasks, where in theory, you can weight each task and predict the next task. So that's what we did. We took the concept of expected goals, which they stole from the concept of sabermetrics. If you've ever watched the film Moneyball with Jonah Hill and Brad Pitt, or read the book by Michael Lewis. And we took that concept and we've applied it to e-commerce websites. So we can accurately track the intent of an audience and also predict their next action, which doesn't necessarily have to be a purchase. Because, by the way, our research suggests that 86% of all your audience, dependent on the site, has a low level of intent to purchase within that session. I mean, it's a proponent as to why you only have a 2% conversion rate on average, for goodness sake. So I don't know if it accurately answers your question, but I think by understanding the intent of your audience, you're automatically giving context and meaning to why they're there. And then you could be more appropriate to them. Then you don't have to give, 10% discount codes off to people who are going to buy anyways, or people have just landed onto your store, Mm-hmm. So I completely forgot what your first question was. I just got into this.
The first question at the beginning or the last one?
Who knows? Just anything. I'm just talking now. So yeah, I don't know. I think meaning.
What I was asking you is, how do you measure that? I mean, if you are to look at the success of a personalization endeavor, what I'm hearing is that you can progressively look at the patterns which lead or which gives you clues that this conversion is going to happen, or that revenue is going to show up, and that basically can be leveraged by marketers, by marketeers. And the question is, how do you look at the success of a personalization program, and when can you, let's say, a company wants to adopt that and says, okay, David, I got it. I want to put back the person into personalization. I want to make money and help our customers make progress.
Well, I think it's basically not just looking at quantity, but looking at quality as well. So at the moment, the majority of retailers just look at quantity. They look at results, the end output, the goal in a football match.
Mm-hmm.
And they often omit, as a result of that, quality, the composition of traffic. Is the majority of our traffic, do they have a high level of intent? Where are they in their browsing stage? What's their mindset? i.e., an expected goal. Is like analyzes the performance of a football match. We often talk about it in a state of performance, not results. Or really, it should be performance with results. So when you're talking about measuring intent or measuring the results of a personalization campaign, I would look at basically not just the quantity, the result, but also the quality, the performance.
All right. So when you say quality of the results, how do you measure that? How are you aware about the fact that the customers are happy? Do you survey them? Do you get the pulse of them? Do you do like do you look at or you look at other kind of metrics? So let's say I'm an online retailer. I've made this let's say efforts to
Yeah,
personalize my website in a manner that is not something like you're new here, here's 10% from us, just like this.
yeah.
So how is the company looking at the impact, the quality of uh, their personalization efforts?
Well, they do that through, or they should do that through various predictive metrics, because
Mhm.
the problem with retrospective metrics is that the things already happened.
Yeah,
Um, when you often,
descriptive.
exactly, when you often personalize, the metrics that you use are those quantitative results-based metrics, so conversion rate, revenue, and therein lies the problem: is that you're not being personal at all. You are really designing for the business. And I know what people will say is, well, we're doing conversion rate optimization. We're designing for the user to help them convert. But really, I would actually question whether you are persuading them or manipulating them, whether you are making things easier for them or making things easier for you. What is the purpose? I think is probably the biggest question I have. What is the purpose of your personalization campaign? Now, it has to be balanced. I'm not silly enough to just think that you only need metrics for the user and not for the business. I appreciate that. But my question is more about the imbalance of those two things.
Yeah.
In terms of measuring, I go back to, you need to measure the quality as much as the quantity. You need to ask questions like, am I being appropriate to this user at this point in time? Let me give you an example. Let me give you an example of social proof. I haven't proven this theory yet, but I'm going to. And that is the theory that social proof is vastly inappropriate for the majority of your customers. And the net positive that you get from your social proof campaigns, 50 people looking at this or 5 people bought this, they only work on the few rather than the majority. So think about all those people that are looking at a product at that point in time, that have enough confidence in that product, that are far enough down their journey that they are going to be persuaded by that message. How many do you think that is? I think it's not very many at all. I think it's a few.
Yeah.
Now, we know that these messages work. We all need to read like Cialdini's book to identify that social proof is a thing. Exclusivity, scarcity, these things work. They don't work for everyone. And I actually think they're inappropriate for the vast majority. I feel as though they could even incite anxiety in the vast majority and only gently persuade the few. So therefore, my recommendation would be to identify those types of audience where social proof does gently persuade them, target those audience, and be more appropriate to the vast majority of your audience that is nowhere near ready to buy just yet. That is not through social proof. There's a very famous quote that's in my book that I really like to cite quite a lot, by an ex-FBI director called Robin Dreeke. And he said that the difference between persuasion and manipulation is intent, i.e., understanding the context of your audience and be more appropriate to them.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm hearing, David, is that you could progressively build profiles of behavior patterns, right? I mean, you could build profiles based on the behavior patterns of the visitors on a website, and based on those clues and events, you could be relevant by using the right persuasion or no persuasion method, because basically it's not about not everything works for everyone, which means scarcity might work for some of them, scarcity might not work for the other part, right?
Yeah,
And what I'm
I'm not
hearing is
talking about.
to craft this type of relevant persuasion methods according to the micro events, right?
It does. It sounds obvious, right? I'm not talking about some Cambridge Analytica shite where you need to bucket people into an ocean profile and persuade them based on that ocean profile. I'm just talking about human behavior. I'm just talking about being like absolutely appropriate. I
Yeah.
know you, and it's very kind of you to invite me on CVO Live. It would be inappropriate for me to charge you or something like that because I already know you. That's a really shitty example. I'm sorry for swearing twice, by the way, in the last 30 seconds. But I'm trying to put an example of just appropriateness into the context of our discussion.
Yeah.
It feels obvious, does it not?
Yeah. It's clear now. Now the question is, where do you think the adoption is going to be? Because we are coming from let's say we are playing into a market where online retailers were being guided by growth initially. Now they are guided by profits and profitability. Getting from growth, the pendulum is going in the opposite direction right now. But where the adoption is going to be from your perspective, because it's clear that they can also make money, more money, right? They can be more performant, and they can also be more relevant, which leads to having more happy customers.
Well, I think it's about focus. So there's a couple of things there when we talk about adoption. Number one is tech have been doing this for years. B2B have been doing this for years. The concept of intent data is not new whatsoever. B2B uses intent data day in, day out. That's been the case for about 7 or 8 years. Google first introduced the concept of intent in 2015 with RankBrain, where they tried to get the context of the words that you were typing in, not just the letters and the words that you were typing in. Spotify use it, Netflix use it, Facebook use it, Amazon use it. Good. This is not new. This is just about adoption. The second thing, therefore, is thinking about intent as a means to prioritize effectively. So we were taught as retailers that more is more. Google, Facebook, any form of traffic acquisition source, that like the more you put in the top of the hopper, the more that comes out of the hopper. But have you ever stopped to consider the quality of what you're putting in the hopper? Because what you can do with the concept of intent is understand whether they have a specific level of intent, a low intent, in which case your approach should be to nurture them. If they have a high intent, your approach should be to leave them alone because they're going to buy anyways, for example. There's probably like a nice percentage between medium and high intent that are persuadable, that the social proofs of the work would work for. Target those. Like, we're talking about priorities, focus on those people first, like simultaneously, or you can nurture those at the top of the hopper or the bottom of the funnel, whichever way you want to look at it. So for me, this is about doing more with less and going against the grain of more is more. And it's pretty simple stuff. It's very basic selling principles. It's just been, and it's stolen from other formats, right? It's stolen from the B2Bs of the world. It's stolen from tech, and retail always follows tech. But it's just the concept of being more appropriate, which I think is a very human principle. But if you want to make more money, I think this is a great way to do it because you're prioritizing effectively.
So what I'm noticing here, David, is that we could contemplate a future where companies will be in a position to leverage not only the real-time intent data, but also the historical data, like the past behavioral data. And if you know that you have, I don't know, thousands or hundreds of thousands of customers with a history between you and them, you know that you had customers that bought from that category, that brand, that returned that product, that were so unhappy that they opened up 2 tickets in the last 2 months around their past deliveries, that bought these products and not other ones. And then they are in real time on the website, and they are behaving like they need assistance rather than buying, because you have different purposes on your website. It's not only about pursuing visitors, because you and different purposes, and you are the only retailers that wake up to the reality. I mean, you are always pointing everyone towards buying. If you want to get assist on a purchase that you've already done, you need to scroll down and find it, to play hide and seek with the footer. So what I'm hearing is that in the future, all of these data, all of those data points will be leveraged, can be and will be leveraged, so that the individuals, the consumers, will be served way better, so that their online experience will not match the offline experience, but will get at a decent level, without being bombarded with irrelevant discount codes that nobody is using because they are there not to buy. Right? That's what
Yeah.
I'm hearing from you.
Sounds like a great world to live in. One where we don't have generic templated shite, where we move stuff around on a page because we think that that improves conversion rate for absolutely everybody. No,
Yeah,
it's about a world where we're more appropriate with our customers, and that enables a more ethical, more human selling process. But as a business, it allows us to prioritize as well. It
yeah,
allows us to serve more relevant messages to those users, and not assuming that everyone is on your website to buy.
yeah. So, David, what I have to add on this, in this scenario, is that this is a great initiative to improve the value that the customers are getting from the company, right? So that's going to end up for having more valuable customers, because it's this principle, right? It's reciprocity. You always get what you give. So if you give
Yeah,
more value to your customers, you'll be able to extract more value from your customers. So it's also part of this CVO methodology, where you come up with initiatives to become relevant, so that you have happy customers that will want to come back. It's not about you bombarding them with emails after that. What I also see in this approach, where you come up with all these data points, is that you need to do it cross channel. So I don't think that the website is the only place to tweak, the only channel. I think it has to be cross channel personalization, right? So because otherwise you have this Frankenstein approach, where you focus on some of the customers on one channel, and on the other channel you treat them like they are brand new and they deserve a new discount.
but the signals that you give, the implicit signals, you can identify those and respond appropriately. So I feel as though the mixture between real-time behavior signals plus past data information makes for like a beautiful personalization approach. That's my theory, anyways.
Yeah, perfect. So, David, as we are getting close to the end of this episode, let me know, what questions haven't I been inspired enough to ask you?
I don't know. This was just a conversation, right? What questions haven't you asked? Well, you haven't asked about AI, which is good. That's the one question I get asked all the time. You haven't asked, interestingly, what is my definition of personalization? I think that occurs
Yeah,
quite.
let's hear that. Oh, let
Yes.
me ask you first, right?
Okay, go for it.
David, what is your definition of personalization, if you please?
Okay, I don't really have a definition, because ironically, I think that by having a generic definition, it is not very personalized in its approach. I think everyone has a different definition. I also think that personalization is slightly more conceptual. It's like asking what is creativity or what is entrepreneurship. That's why everyone has a different slant or angle to it, but the sentiment is always the same. So my values and beliefs as to what personalization is are the following. I believe that personalization is all about a relationship. I think it's a communication principle, not a discipline. And I feel as though it's designed to, it's an action of a verb. So it is designed to be personal. And therefore, it's the action of being personal. So I would leave your audience with asking them, how can you be more personal in your communication principle in order to build a better relationship with your customers?
Beautiful. Loved it. So, David, where can people get a hold of you? So, where are you mostly active on? Which social media?
Probably LinkedIn.
Mhm.
I would say so. There's only one David Mannheim. I think that's true. It's a very unique name. Uh, you can register for my book on my LinkedIn profile. It should be out in 2 weeks, to be fair. So this is a live event, right? But uh, yeah, end of July, it'll be available for pre-order. I hope. It's taken ages.
Super. Can't wait to read it. So, David, thanks a lot for being part of the CVO Live, and
Thank you.
hopefully we'll see you again in a couple of months to tell us how well received was your book, and to tell us how was after becoming a published author. So,
Okay.
that being said, all the best from Bucharest, everyone, and we'll see each other in the next episode.